And yes, tonight, I think, based on the start here, there are both of us. There are both of us. There are two of us. There's me and you. There's something. I'm easy. That's Chris Allen, who looks like he has bandwidth tonight. Chris, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. I think everything's working tonight, so I think we're good to go.
I know. You left me hanging. I had to kill an hour, and, my notes were all based on an expert to answer questions, and so I couldn't ask me any questions because I didn't know what, I'm going to do.
We actually had actual football content to discuss last week, and of course my internet didn't want to work.
I know. Yeah, we tried. I mean, I told people we tried. It just was one of those crazy things. But all right. Well, welcome. Like I said, it is a Wednesday night, 10 p.m. Lenny Melnick, FantasySports.com, the Legend Sports Network. And a couple things before we go on. First of all, Andrea. I've sat here for a half hour listening to Andrea getting ready. Andrea was a little fired up. I appreciate it. Hey, there's nothing wrong with a little excretion once in a while. Sometimes you just have to get it out there, I think. So
what?
Yeah, excretion, is that a term?
I have no. Do I want to know what you're talking about?
I don't know. No, I'm just saying. There was, Andrea did a show before us tonight, and she had a lot to say.
Okay.
Then the other thing, again, and I think most of our regulars, except for our, I don't know what, Argentina or Aussie listeners, they may or may not, know that we are, me and you are from the Dayton, Ohio. And, this was a place where mass shooting took place this last weekend. So I felt we should at least, it's one of those things you don't think is going to happen in your area. Thoughts and prayers to everybody here in Dayton. El Paso also had it. I mean, this close, I know people that were there, so it's pretty, just a different thing. And again, it's back to Andrea's rant. Andrea, I get it. There's things that go on every day that you have to think about and worry about that you own. And then things like this that you have no control over whatsoever can change your life. And again, I'm not a person that thinks you should dwell on it, but, you just have to know what's out there. And, thoughts and prayers to the two cities, that were involved in the mass shootings this week. So I thought I'd throw that out there. Put it in a little football thing. I think today the Bengals came out, donated, $75,000 to the Dayton, Oregon District Fund to help, people out. And from what I understand, I think yesterday a couple of the teams from Texas donated to the El Paso thing. So
that sounds about right.
So sports, sports get involved. It was a big deal around here. The Dayton Dragons, also downtown, a baseball team, they decided not to have game that day. And then the next day did a doubleheader, and in between they did a ceremony and everything. And for all the victims, they came out and each player, had a rose and all that. It was really, really cool. So, sports can bring people together. I mean, I don't know what anybody says. I mean, it's, there's a lot of hate in sports, but I don't think, we always hate the other team, or we hate what happened to our fantasy, or we hate this, or we hate that. But you know what? I mean, I think that's just the way we say it. Sports, we love, we just love the competition. We love what's going on. We just get sometimes too wrapped up. So
I think so.
Just thought I'd throw that out there to start the show just a little bit. And, like I said, let everybody know that, we're thinking about them, and that, hey, fantasy sports is kind of goofy or crazy. It is, isn't the most important thing in life, and you shouldn't let it, take you over the top. Let's go that route. So take every day easy. That's what I say. So,
right.
Couple people, Lou Landers in the chat room. Andrea's still hanging around. So thanks for being out there. Yeah, so we had things to talk about last week, which I had my notes up here. I have no idea now what I did with last week's notes. But we will go into a little depth here in a little bit. I thought we'd talk about the top tiers of each category here in a little bit. Get your opinion. And then next week, maybe we'll get into the middle tiers. And then, by that week, people will be drafting everything. But we'll try to get to those late tiers and all that. I don't know what you want to get into first. Contracts, injuries, signings. As far as fantasy and football goes right now, I'll ask you then. What do you think's the most popular news of the day? Is it the contracts, the running backs?
Yeah. I think that seems to be the case. I mean, because everybody's worried or trying to get back into the whole the valuation of running backs. Now we have Zeke and Melvin Gordon. So everybody's trying to figure out what the proper price tag is for each of these players, with a lot of both like real life and fantasy implications kind of hanging in the balance. So that's been the primary topic for the last couple of days or so.
Definitely, by far, it's been on all the talk shows and the podcasts. Obviously, you're downloading podcasts that are current. That's the main topic because, and I really believe none of this would be that big of a deal if last year hadn't happened. If Bell doesn't do what he does and not play at all, that has everybody on edge a little bit. Right. So when we get into running back tiers, maybe we'll get into it a little more individually there. But do you think this is a good or bad thing for real football? Not fantasy, I'm talking real football. I know we talked just a couple weeks ago when we had bandwidth that the thought is the kids are so athletic now that running backs, there's a huge difference between a Zeke and maybe the 20th running back, but not as much as we think. You know what I'm saying? Even though because like I said that day, I think we talked about it, it's still sports cars. You're still shopping for sports cars. The worst one is still pretty nice, in the right, situation. So what do you think? Right. Is this good or bad for real football?
I guess I'll play the fence straddler here.
Whatever.
But I'll say it's good for real football. I'll say it's good for the players because I think when it comes to leveraging their talents against the team and actually having a real conversation about how much these positions are actually worth to the teams, I think it's a good conversation that we need to have. So I think from that aspect, it's good. Now the timing of it, that's the problematic part, right? Because not only are the teams now thrown off in terms of their personnel decisions, it filters down to us, even in our small little, hobby that we do. But I think it would be nice if some of these things would be out on display in February, March, April versus late July into the middle of August.
I agree, but I also think that you said the timing's wrong for us, but obviously the timing is really all the players have on their side. They can't sit out in the middle of some other. You know what I'm saying this is the only time they can do it. So is this a long-term issue that has to be dealt with the next contract? Can it be solved? Is this one of those things that just now because of the new offenses, it's back to every time you change rules, especially drastically, and I know baseball goes through this, we think we're going to improve the game. Let's improve the game by opening up and making defenses. If you just touch them, it's a penalty. Let's none of this or none of that. Well, isn't this now kind of part of that? We've made it to where offenses kind of can do what they want. So the passing game's kicked in. The running back that catches passes is now more popular. So to me, it devalues that running back a little bit more now. So
it devalues a specific skill set. So guys that come into the league that are your prototypical grinders, those big guys that can they can shoulder 250 plus carries, but don't have a lick of ability in the passing game. I mean, those guys that might have a special place in the heart of some coach that coached back in the late 90s or even before that. I mean, it's just not the same since the league is trending or has been trending towards a passing league for the past 5 or 6 years now.
Right. So that's my thing. I mean, again, it's just like I said, we change rules and other things pop up later, and now maybe they change rules again. I don't know. Yeah, now obviously, the Cowboys went ahead and signed name.
Well, they've already got Tony Pollard.
But they just signed the guy from. I keep thinking of him as Washington because that's where he was the Rookie of the Year and all that.
Alfred Morris.
Alfred Morris, who was on the team. He was on the team last year.
Mm-hmm, yeah. Serviceable backup.
Serviceable backup. I think. I mean, obviously, if you think Zeke's going to sit out, he moves up. Yeah, I don't think he's. He's not a top 10, maybe even 15, but at some point, if he is the starter for the Dallas Cowboys at running back, he has value in fantasy.
Right. I think so. I'd be surprised if they wound up crowning him the starter. But I do think that's within the realm of possibility because we've seen I guess weirder things happen as was proved with the Chiefs last year, and then the same thing with the Rams as well.
Right. Hold on. I was checking. I see someone said my mic wasn't sounding right. So maybe now I'm better. Testing 1, 2. Do I sound any better?
Yeah, that sounds better. I thought you had messed with stuff. So I was going to let it go.
No. I was worried about doing anything because of your bandwidth, but I don't know what I did. I didn't check it, but now I'm selected the right mic. You don't care what I sound like, but no one out there does either.
Well, no, because you keep messing with stuff enough that I just figured you messed with something.
You're allowed to say I sound bad. You're allowed.
I can still hear you, and we're good.
What? We're good, right? We're good. But no, I even tested. I tapped I did the official mic tap and everything. I thought I was professional, but
the first thing I noticed was that we were off on the video, but that's not a big deal.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Batman 95 GT is the one who told me that my microphone was, which is amazing.
Yeah. Who would have?
Which is amazing, right? I mean, it's amazing because I have a 95 GT, that's black, kind of like something Batman would have.
Right. And I know somebody that used to have a Batman tattoo on their forearm.
I have a son that has a Batman tattoo also, but my son's a little, he's crazy. So the running backs, injury wise, I haven't recalled anything terrible the last day or two.
No,
I guess
some hamstring injuries here,
Brown, right? I mean, Brown has a foot problem because he stayed in the freezer too long or something.
Yes, cryo freeze.
Yeah, which I don't know. I think that's kind of funny.
I've never heard of that treatment before. I mean, before today, I never heard of that type of treatment. So it's wild to me. You'll
make fun because I've heard of it because I listened to 2 different podcasts that the guys that do these, and you did one, but they do the big one. These runs that are the Warrior runs and the Spartan races. Well, there's like a competitive network of those. I mean, it's like a league. They go all these places, and I listened to a guy that does that.
Okay,
and he actually does that. He's into that, cold ice water pool and all that. And he now has one of those. He gets in one of those ice machine things where you get in for like 3 hours or 3 minutes actually, and then because they're finding out cold is better than heat now. The cold actually helps the inflammation and all that. So do you think we'll see Zeke week 1?
I do. Yeah, in his case, I think we'll see him week 1.
You think?
Yep.
Now, do you think because we'll see them in week 1 because of Zeke, or we'll see them in week 1? We'll see him in week 1 because of Jerry.
Because of Jerry, I think they'll give him. I think they'll get him a deal that will be close to what he's looking for. I mean, there's already been enough public posturing to kind of point them in that direction. So I think they'll get a deal done within, if not by this Friday, probably within the next week or so. That'd be my guess.
All right. I too. What about Gordon? What do you think? You don't think we'll see Gordon week 1?
I'm less certain on the Melvin Gordon situation because we talked about this beforehand.
Yeah.
That he was 100% full on supporter of what Le'Veon was doing last season and what he's asking for. And the team has in the past they've been historically somewhat stingy in terms of paying some of their star players. So I'm less inclined to believe that they're going to come to. I mean, look at how they treat their current team. I mean, they play in a friggin' like soccer stadium. So, I mean, how they're going to wind up paying Melvin what he's asking for, I just don't see it happening.
Right. I kind of agree with you. Like I said, it's just a whole new, like I said, it's just something that for fantasy, we haven't had to deal with much. And now, it's here. And obviously it affects the first round, which is my next question. I want your opinion on, because I heard a podcast and blah, blah, and you know me. I think most of these experts are, just say stuff to be saying stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I have heard forever, and I just disagree. Unless I have the saying wrong, and that is you can't win your draft if you screw up in the first round. Or wait, you can't win your draft necessarily from your first round pick, but you can
lose it. Yes.
That's bull dinky and poppycock. I really believe if you're a good fantasy football player, and for instance, me or you in pretty much any home league, we probably, if we lose our first round pick for any reason, we probably are still going to be competitive. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I just don't buy it. That's what I'm saying. Now, I don't want any of my picks to go bad. I want all of my picks to go up in value. I want all of my picks to go, look like they were great value. Now, the problem is that with pick one, you never, you can't get more value. So people, I think that's where that saying comes from. You can only look bad. You can never look better on a first round pick. You're only ever going to look bad. But last year I was in two different leagues where Bell was drafted in the first round. And in one of those, Bell was the number one pick. Mm-hmm. And in those two leagues, the guy who had Bell went to the championship game. So, I just think if you screw up your draft period, it's not going to be good for your game. But I don't believe, the first round is this thing. I just don't buy it. I've played enough years. I've done enough drafts. Every round in my mind is very important that you make the right selection. But at the same time, I don't think you could, you just can't quit because your first round draft pick got hurt the first week.
I wouldn't say that you should quit, but I do agree with you to a point that yes, if you understand the value of some players that you can get in the later rounds and then they can wind up hitting, then sure. But I think, and I've done a study on this, I have this up, but there is something to that saying that you can lose your draft in the first round.
Just throwing data at me all the time.
I'm just saying. Well, let me explain it to you. So I did a study that looked at just the past 5 seasons. Now I could extend it going back, but it looked at the past 5 seasons and looked at the average PPR scoring for the players drafted in the first round. And there's a clear drop off between the players that we draft in the first round, and then it just cascades as you go down. So in the first round, I found that this is for all non-quarterbacks. It's about 21 points per game for players typically drafted in the first round, and then the second round it drops down to about 17. And then the third round, it's down to about 14. Fourth round, it's down to about 12, 11, and it kind of cascades from there. It levels off after that, and you've got some spikes like in the mid to later rounds. But the first round, it's really hard for you to make up such a significant difference between the first round and the second round because it's all packed with those elite players that can't always find.
We can shift data and move data. I understand the numbers, and I know you're a number guy, but at the same time, that's just you're comparing numbers to other numbers. I'm comparing fantasy players' skills to other fantasy player skills. My point is, if you're listening to podcasts, if you're paying attention to a lot of stuff, and you're in a normal home league, I think you can take a little more gamble in the first round. But you've just put a whole bunch of constraints on people that they don't always do that. Not a lot of people listen to a lot of podcasts. Not a lot of people listen to pay attention to all that stuff. That's my point. I still don't believe that in most of our leagues, if that first round pick goes south. Now, again, I'm not saying you take a punter. I'm not even saying you take a terrible pick. I just don't think you should be so scared that you don't move forward. And if anything, if you learn something from last year, if you just back up the player a little earlier, I get it. Most people last year, the way it went, no one was picking up Connor. And then eventually, if you drafted later, some were getting Connor and he moved way up. But if you're picking Zeke, if tomorrow you have your draft and you're picking in the first round and you're pick number 3 and Zeke falls, I would have no problem taking Zeke. I'm probably going to grab Alfred Morris a couple rounds before I think anyone else would even consider. That protects me a little bit, but at the same time, I think with that knowledge, you can move forward. I think the same with Gordon. If you get Gordon, it's Eckler, right? Eckler.
Right. But you're paying a much higher premium on drafting that backup because both Eckler and Justin Jackson are going in. Well, Eckler's going in the 7th, 8th, 9th round. Justin Jackson right now is going the 11th, 12th, and 13th. So that opportunity cost that you're now putting on 2 assets on the same team that literally cancel each other out. If one's starting, the other one's not. I mean, that's going to cost you a lot more.
Where do you decide? We'll start right now. Then I'll pull up. I'll pull up the thing and we'll just start there. Then we'll flow this into our thing and we'll just do running backs to get started. Cool. Then with our tier setting. So, but my point, but even then I'm saying, at some point you have to feel Zeke is a value, even in, this week he's a value somewhere in the first round. The key is where is that value? And I mean, my main draft, which is in 2 weeks, I pick in the 12th spot. If Zeke falls to the 12th, I'll have him.
I'm not saying that at some point that those risks don't outweigh the opportunity cost or anything like that. But I do think there is credence to the idea that if you do wind up whiffing on your first round pick, your uphill battle becomes much steeper. Okay. And while you can point to, I guess, the Le'Veon Bell, James Conner thing last season, I was in leagues where guys drafted Le'Veon Bell and they were last in the league. I mean, I have my own. I've seen it plenty of times where folks have whiffed on their first round pick and it didn't work out well. I mean, I saw a lot of people that drafted David Johnson in the first round. I mean, ask those folks.
I've also seen people that nailed their first round and they still finished last. So
sure,
that's my point. I don't think your numbers hold up 100%. That's all I'm saying.
Nobody's saying that it holds up 100%.
What I'm saying is, I must have heard it 100 times in the last few days. That the first round pick is the most important. But I just don't buy it. And you're probably not going to sell me on it. I'm
not trying to sell you on that. I'm saying that the first round pick holds in terms of the level of talent in the first round pick is always going to, I believe that it's always going to outweigh the stuff that you'll be able to likely find in any round after that.
All right. Let's see if this sharing thing works.
What you got?
Add to stream. And can you make out names? Do you see that?
For the most part. Mm-hmm.
For the most part. All right. And this is
I can see that.
I just pulled up what I would call a generic cheat sheet.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're going to move them around a little bit, but I'm only looking here to maybe hit at the top. We got a half hour now. So if we're going to get through every position, I just wanted to get us what I would say, maybe tier 1, maybe tier 2, depending on how many are in a tier. We might get to tight end and there are only going to be 1 in the tier 1 and then, 2 or 3, but let's just start with running back. And in the first tier, who do you have right now? This, for instance, have the top 3: Barkley, Kamara, McCaffrey, Elliott, Johnson. So those are the top 5. Do you like that order? Would you change the order? Or do you have more than 1 or 2 running backs right now in tier number 1?
As of right now, I've got Barkley. I've got Barkley and McCaffrey in the top tier, and then I've got Kamara and Zeke in the next one after that.
Okay, I kind of am with you, and I think that now that I think about it, I do think I click PPR. So this is probably PPR.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
So tier 1, Barkley, McCaffrey. I think I agree 100%. I think right now, because of the contract stuff, obviously to me, if Zeke signs tomorrow, I put Zeke at number 1 immediately. That's just me. But
you put him in the first tier, probably at the top of tier 1.
Correct.
So then would your first tier be all 3 of those guys? So then Zeke, Barkley, and CMC?
I think that would be I would be happy with any of those 3, and I think that's why most people would say if you want a running back and you want one of the top 3, you should pick in the top 3.
Yeah.
So that's kind of I kind of agree with you for sure. And to be real honest, I think even in a non PPR, those would be the 2 I'd start with. I think right now. I think McCaffrey catches a lot, but still that's fine. You'll get points for those. But if he's catching balls, he's going to score a lot too. You're going to get that in scoring and yardage. You're just not getting the catch. So I would definitely go Barkley, McCaffrey. So let's just see. Let's first in tier 2, because like I said, I want to do tiers 1 and 2 to get started, and then if we have time, we'll come back. But who would you put at the top now of tier number 2? Obviously, this has Kamara, Elliott, Johnson, Connor, Chubb, and Bell.
I'd cut that second tier off at DJ.
At who?
At DJ. So Alvin.
So you think right now there's only 3 people in tier 2?
Yeah, I'd probably cut it off right there.
All right. So are you keeping it in the order they have it, which is Kamara, Elliott, Johnson, and right now this being a PPR, I'm trying to want to keep it like if we were thinking a half PPR, but I didn't think I had that option here. But I'm just trying for us right now just to come up with what we would think would just be the better running backs, fantasy or not fantasy. But would you put Elliott at the top of that tier or the bottom of that tier right now?
If we were drafting today, he'd be at the bottom of that. He'd be at the bottom of that tier.
All right. So we're going to move him to the bottom of that tier. So would you keep Kamara above him and then Johnson?
Yeah, I think that feels right.
I think it feels right to me, especially in PPR. If non-PPR, I guess I'd probably leave it the same too. Kamara's going to catch quite a bit, but I think Johnson's capable of catching passes too. So I think I agree with you.
Well, of course he can. I mean, he's a converted receiver.
Amen. David Johnson has just slowly moved up though all year. I mean, he wasn't in the top 4 or 5 early on, in my opinion, because obviously early on, we had Gurley up there till things started happening and stuff like that. You had Gordon up in that area. I'm not going to let's not go deep into tier 3. I would just be curious the top 2 or 3 people that we would put in tier 3, and we'll come back another time and modify tier 3. They have Connor, Chubb, Bell, Mixon, Cook, Gurley, and I'll throw Williams and Gordon down there. I kind of think in those names, I don't know if there's another tier in there. I'm almost in my head, though. They're all pretty close. They all have some issues. They all have some upside. They all have some questions. But who would be the first? Let's just go. Who would be your number 1 person in that tier?
In that tier, it would probably probably would be Connor for me. That offensive line, he does his receiving chops aren't that great, but I mean it's good enough that he can function in that offense. So yeah, it'd be Connor for me.
All right, and like I said, I put them all in that same area. I can't come up with a reason to move him down, but I can't come up with much of a reason that I couldn't move a few people above him if I wanted. Let's go this one more a different way. In tier 3, out of those 4 or 5 we see there, which of those 3 or 4, if everything went right, would you see the most likely could end the season that they should have been in tier 1?
In tier 1?
You see what
yeah.
If everything goes perfectly for them, which in tier 3 would you go, you know what? That's the guy most likely that next
where are we cutting tier 3 off?
Tier 1 or pardon?
Where are we cutting tier 3 off? at behind. I
would say Gordon. Right now, I look at Gordon as the person I would cut off, because I think Gordon comes down to contract. If he signs tomorrow, he might move to tier 2. Or at a minimum, he'd be at least the top of this tier. But I'm just curious, if the season went perfect for one of these 5 or 6 players, which of those 5 or 6 would you go, all right, next year he's going to be tier 1 probably?
Dalvin Cook.
See, I think Le'Veon Bell. I think Le'Veon Bell goes to New York and just has, if everything just goes perfect and he gets that, he touches the ball 400 times like he wants to do. I think Le'Veon Bell next year, we could go, he's a tier 1 running back. I mean, I think right now he's only not in tier 1 or 2 because he's not done it yet there and he had a year off. So I kind of say Le'Veon Bell, you say Dalvin Cook. So that's why I asked that question. Would you move either one of those up to the top of tier 3 because they have that ability?
No, because I think given their current situations, I think it's not really worth the risk, because once you move him in there, you're more apt to reach on them in drafts. But I do agree that the Bell's probably in the best spot to do it just because we've seen him do it before.
Yeah.
So
New York, that's the issue. We just haven't seen him do it with that team.
Right. It's well, with his situation, I mean, his is going to be the very first case study where how much does offensive line truly matter
for a really good running back?
And while he might be able to produce in a PPR league on receptions and whatnot, are the touchdowns going to be there? I logically speaking, I just don't see how he can recreate what he had in Pittsburgh.
I would say he doesn't have to have his best Pittsburgh seasons to be a number 1 next year,
but he needs at least 80% of what he had in Pittsburgh.
That's what I'm saying. I'm just saying I think he could get there not by being as good as he was in Pittsburgh, but by he could literally touch the ball 50, 80 more times than the most he did. And he touched it a lot in Pittsburgh, but he could touch it that many more times in this season and could make a difference. The only issue I would really have, I'm not sure I would keep Chubb at number 2 in that tier. I would maybe move him down below Bell, Mixon, Cook. I like him in that tier, but I also think the problem I have with Chubb right now is, and we can say what we want, there's another good running back coming back to play in Cleveland at some point. And unfortunately, that's going to be towards the end, in your fantasy season and playoffs and all that. So I have an issue with Chubb just getting the numbers all year round. So
he'd be the first person I'd pull down into tier 4, probably below Gordon.
I think right now I'm just going to keep him what I would call technically in that tier, because I think if we ended up if I had to do this right now, I would probably cut the tier off looking at it under Todd Gurley, and then I'd start the next tier Chubb, Williams, Gordon. Just kind of my quick look, and there's probably some interchangeable whatever. The issue now with Damian Williams is he's hurt, and the coach is talking like, well, if he can't practice, I might not need him. I think that's just coach speak right at the moment, but it went from he was going to play every down to now he's hurt. And again, Melvin Gordon's still a contract issue. I think I changed my mind. I think I'd have to I still think I'd put Melvin Gordon at the bottom of tier 3 if I was drafting even tomorrow.
I'd probably not. I'd honestly pull up Kerryon Johnson too, with his opportunity and the way that Detroit wants to run that offense.
But my issue with him would be similar to what I said with Bell. I think he has the ability. He just hasn't done it yet. I mean, at least Bell's done it, but not with this team. Kerryon Johnson, they talk like he can do it. I just don't like moving people up because they may do it. I think he's going to get the opportunity, but we still haven't, I don't know. CJ Anderson's a champion. He's always around. I mean, he could be their starter. Who knows? I don't know. All right. I want to save that. I agree. Tier 1, which is why we're doing this, is Barkley, McCaffrey. Tier 2, Kamara, Johnson, Elliott. That's kind of what we were talking, and we'll come back and maybe fine tune tier 3, 4, and 5 next week when we maybe have some more information and, move on. Let's move to wide receivers and let's get an idea here on our try to at least get tier 1, 2, 3 type thing going here. They have Hopkins, Adams, Jones, Beckham, Thomas, Hill. Smith-Schuster, Evans, Brown, Hilton in the top 10.
Mhm.
Right now, is Hopkins in a tier by himself? I've heard people say that.
It's Hopkins and Thomas in a tier by themselves at number 1 for me.
Hopkins and Thomas.
Yes.
And see, they have Thomas all the way down here. I'm not seeing that play out that way in drafts. So is that are you seeing, is that what you see on other ADPs, or just the way you draft, or just the way
at least by ADP, it's normally gone Hopkins, Adams, Julio, and then maybe a mixture of like
Thomas and Beckham have been together at the end of most.
Yeah, Thomas and Beckham have been around the 11, 12 spot, or at the 1-2 turn. But at least if I'm looking at it from a season long perspective, DeAndre Hopkins and Michael Thomas are pretty much the only two wide receivers that are, one, the primary targets on their team, and two, either have young or unproven talent, or talent that's returning from injury as the guys behind them. Pretty much everybody else, Adams has like 4 or 5 like receivers that they're trying to work in Green Bay. Julio Jones has Calvin Ridley, who already broke out last season. Odell Beckham has Jarvis Landry. Tyreek Hill has to, is working against Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, all those guys. Hopkins and Thomas are really like the guys that that both of their respective teams have to rely on week in and week out. That it just, to me, it seems like they're going to get all the volume. And we saw how well that's worked out for DeAndre Hopkins for the past like 3 to 4 seasons, where he's been like perennially at the top of his class. And then Michael Thomas last year, who just, when it comes to wide receiver efficiency, he was just, absolutely setting records when it comes to like what he can do with the ball in his hands, or when like Drew Brees targets him. So at least for me, those are the top 2, like without much of a, it's not, I hate using this phrase, but it's not particularly close.
Baloney. I don't know. I think it's a no-brainer that Hopkins is 1.
Yeah, I think you'll get no argument out of me for.
The key to me is he 1, and then tier 2 starts off there, or do you need to add someone to his tier? I guess would be my point. I guess, and the reason I say that is I've drafted enough already. I've done enough mock drafts. This is one of those, to me, it's easy to say he's all by himself, because no one's drafted another wide receiver before him. Across the board, he is number 1.
Yeah, he's like 106, 107.
Which to me makes him tier 1. Unfortunately, I don't feel you can add really anybody else to his tier, because now everyone else has questions. I've seen Thomas go second, but I've also seen Jones, Adam, Beckham go second wide receiver, which is to me why they all should be in their own tier. Because if I'm drafting, that's the way I would do it. If Hopkins is available, that's who I'm taking. If he's gone, now I've got to think a little bit. And if I have to think a little bit, then they should be in the same tier. Those people I'm thinking about need to be in a separate tier than Hopkins. I'm asking before I put Hopkins in tier 1. If that, I obviously you already told me you thought he belonged in tier 1. I don't think you can put someone in tier 1 with Hopkins if you know for a fact you'd take Hopkins first. Isn't the whole idea of a tier being willing to take either player?
No, the other way, the way that at least I look at
it, that's exactly what it is.
No, the way that I look at tiers is like how you compare them to everybody else, and also how they would fit onto your team, and also how they're used like on their own respective teams. And I think that Michael Thomas has a clear differentiation than any of the other guys in that second tier.
Obviously, we don't get along because.
Remember when we used to agree with each other all the time?
Yeah, we used to agree all the time, because I'm a believer to me, when I set up my tiers, I want to set up my tiers knowing I'm fine getting any of these 5. I'm fine getting any of these 3.
If that's the case, you'd be fine with getting any of those 6. You'd be fine with Hopkins, Thomas, Adams, Jones, Beckham. You'd put them all in one tier.
No, because the difference is if I have the number 1. If I'm the first guy to take a wide receiver off the board, there is no discussion. It's just Hopkins. That's why I believe he needs his own tier. There is no discussion. He is the only person I would take if no other wide receivers are off the board.
But you can't look at tiers as ranks. It's not like a linear way you'd go about going through it.
But see, then, okay, dang it. I know we did a tier episode I don't know, 9 years ago when we were younger. But my point would be, I guess, my whole idea of a tier is if I can get a better value, meaning if I think, let's say we leave it the way I have it right now, which is Thomas, Adams, Jones, Beckham, Evans. Let's just say, if I'm convinced I can get Evans the next time around in the draft order, but still get a tier 2 running back right now, that's the way I look at tiers. Meaning I don't need to get Thomas now because now I know I won't get a tier 2 running back, but I know I can get a tier 2 running back and still get my tier 2 wide receiver. When I'm building my team, that's the way I do my tiers. I look at them as in, now if I've also done that too, I could look at all 5 of those and go, I'm not going to get any of those. I'm drafting 12 and 13. If I don't take them now, they're all going to be gone. So then it might not matter as much. But in a situation where I'm drafting 6th and then coming around and drafting again, what would that be? 15? I'm trying to even think. My math is terrible there, but you know what I'm saying? Where I could go, hey, you know what? I could go ahead and get a running back here. Like we just said, maybe I get Zeke. Pick 6, I get Zeke, knowing that I can come back and get Evans. I'm getting a tier 2 running back and a tier 2 wide receiver. That's the way I do my tiers.
But tiers are supposed to be, ADP agnostic. It's not about where you draft from. It's about how you value the wide receiver, or I guess just the players within the position that you're talking about.
If you're setting up if you're setting up an evaluation for yourself and you're just ranking your players, then I think that's different than tiering. That's just making up your, that's just, I can't even think there's another name for it, but you're just making up your own order of player value. I'm saying in a draft location, would I be happy with any of those people in tier 2? Hey, obviously there's no one in the chat room tonight wants to tell me I'm right. And that's what's important, that people tell me I'm right. All right.
That's all we need is just somebody to tell you that you're right.
Right now, I am going to move Thomas up. I'm going to get you win this one.
Woohoo!
I am. Now, does that mean you would leave Adams, Jones, Beckham, Evans in tier 2? Would you add Schuster or Hill or Antonio Brown or Hill? All of those. Or would you cut tier 2 off at that point?
I would probably add a few more folks to that. I wouldn't keep Mike Evans in that tier.
See, I like Mike Evans. Okay. I think Mike Evans is going to do just fine. Mike Evans, and we all know this. Mike Evans, the numbers here, Mr. Numbers, the numbers show eventually he's going to have 10 touchdowns. That's all I got to say. The numbers say he's due. I know gamblers don't like to use that, but it just sure seems like he's due for 10 touchdowns. And this could be that year. So that's why I'd have trouble moving him down too much. I literally think he's going to get some touchdowns this year. But if we're going to move him out, would you move someone else in, or you just think Jones and Beckham?
I would move Tyreek into that second tier. I would move Juju Smith-Schuster into that. Probably Amari Cooper into that tier. And then probably T.Y. Hilton into that tier as well.
You know what? Now, see, that's the problem. Your tier is huge now. So now, based on that, see, now I'd look at that. If that's what I was going to do, I would definitely move Adams to tier 1. I would make my tier 1 bigger, but because I think and that's back to that's the difference. I think what we're doing here is I look at tiers different than you. I see a huge difference in when I would draft Adams and when I would draft Hilton. And to me, they're not close enough where I would go, okay, I can skip Adams here because I know I'll come back and I can get Schuster. I know I'll get back here. To me, there's a huge difference on my team to have Hilton or and unfortunately I won't say Evans there because I would put Evans still above them, but so that's the way I kind of would look at it. See, I would definitely take Adams out of that group by far. So that tells me maybe he needs to move to tier 1, or Thomas needs to come back down, and that tier some of those need to be dropped down to tier 3, which maybe when we do that at the end of this, we're going to do tiers for all the players, which even gets more involved because now you're comparing.
That's a lot.
So right now we'll leave what you have though. So that means in tier 3, you're starting with Antonio Brown, Allen Cooper. I am not, there's no way I can put Cooper in the tier 2. I just couldn't do it. I barely can do it with T.Y. Hilton, especially with his quarterback. You're going to be out all season with a calf injury. But
all season with a calf injury?
Yeah.
He's going to be out all season with a calf injury.
What do you mean? Then that's what they told us. He wasn't going to be out all season with a shoulder injury either, but it happened. I'm just saying. And they told us he was going to be out 2 days. Now he's going on 2 weeks. I don't know. The whole thing. It's ugly.
But he's not going to be out all season with a calf injury.
All right. If Andrew Luck is hurt, T.Y. Hilton will not be in tier 2, though, would he?
Okay, but you could say that if Aaron Rodgers was hurt, Devontae Adams wouldn't be in there. Come on. What are you doing?
Aaron Rodgers is healthy today. We're setting years like if we were drafting today, you have to think of that, right? I mean, don't you have to think of a wide receivers quarterback being injured right now if you're drafting right now?
No, not really. I guess I don't look at it that way.
You're just saying that because you hate me. All right. So tier 1, Hopkins and Thomas with a big question mark. Then tier 2, we have Adams, Jones, Beckham, Hill, Schuster, Evans, T.Y. Hilton. And then just to make you happy, I'll put Cooper right now at the top of tier 3, but we will come back and visit tier 3 next week and fine tune that. And again, maybe we'll have more news on players and situations, and Luck might be practicing, and I
think he should be in tier 2, but all right, fine.
Oh, I kept Hilton until there's again.
Cooper should be in tier 2. Number one wide receiver on his team.
I actually agree with you if T.Y. Hilton's up there. I don't believe T.Y. Hilton should be there. I think right now we look at the tiering system 2 different ways.
Okay.
And I don't think that's wrong or right. And here's what I would tell,
No, I mean, tiers are definitely subjective.
No. I understand what you're saying. I'm saying I don't think how you use them obviously can be different, because I use tiers in a different way that you use tiers. It sounds like I use tiers, and again, I already explained it. I guess I use tiers as a positional draft thing. If I'm drafting, these 3 or 4 players all have to be similar in numbers to me, meaning I'm willing to take any of the 4 at a certain spot. Or in an auction draft, I'm willing to take any of those 4 for $25. That's the way I look at it. So we'll come back. Again, it's not terrible. I'll ask real quick before we move on, just because I asked it in wide receivers. In what right now, who we have in tier 3, of the few people we have in tier 3, Cooper, Brown, Allen, I'll use Thielen and Diggs, and then I'll say Woods and Cook. If one of those or any of those players you see there, if everything goes perfect for them, which of the people in tier 3 would you go, you know what, the perfect season this year, they'll be in tier 1 next year?
Amari Cooper.
I'm going to say Antonio Brown. I think
you're talking about injury. The man's not even playing right now.
Okay, we just said if everything goes perfect, this is based on
his feet have to work.
If Antonio Brown is healthy, plays 14 games, because he only played 14 games every season with Pittsburgh too, if you recall. I mean, he already took 2 games off. My point is, if everything goes well, I think Carr's just going to throw it up in the air. I think Antonio Brown, if everything goes well, next year people go, all right, I'll put him back in tier 1. He's been there. I'm kind of doing the same reason I did Bell. They both done it. They both are in situations where it's possible, and we'll just see. So let me say
that's a massive drop off between Ben Roethlisberger and Derek Carr.
Now, did you watch the first Hard Knocks?
I did not,
because there's a scene where Brown's on the field with his 3 kids.
Yeah, I heard they were asking where Roethlisberger was at.
Where's Roethlisberger? Where's Roethlisberger?
Yeah.
It was pretty funny.
Poor kids.
How much time we got? We got 10 minutes. Tight end should not take long, because we're going to do 2 tiers right now.
Oh, you don't know. We're going to disagree with everything.
Are we in agreement that Travis Kelce is in a tier by himself?
I think it should be the big 3 in a tier by themselves.
Oh, again, I think we're wrong. So that's why I thought this would be easier, and obviously it's not, because I guess I believe that where I messed up here. delete that tier. I just believe there's a huge difference between Kelsey and then Kittle and Ertz. Kittle and definitely, to be honest, I think there's even a difference between Kittle and Ertz a little bit. I put back to what I would say the last thing. If I'm drafting the first tight end and they're all available, Kelsey's the one you're taking. It's not even a question. After Kelsey's gone, then you have to decide, do I want Kittle or Ertz? And I'm definitely taking those two over Howard or Ingram right at the moment. So I kind of just,
but it's less about comparing the three of them and comparing them across in all the players in the pool at their position, because Kelsey, Kittle, and Ertz, they'll get the most volume out of pretty much any other tight end that you're going to draft.
What order would you draft them in?
What order would I draft them in?
Yep.
Probably Kelsey, Kittle, then Ertz.
Okay, which is the tier I got them. And if all three are available and it's the 5th round, I'm just making that up, and you decided that's the round you're getting a tight end, which one are you taking?
And I guess if one was available, I'd probably take. Actually, to be quite honest with you, I'd probably wind up taking Kittle, because that's just me.
You would take Kittle over Kelsey in round 5.
At that point, I guess honestly, what difference does it make in terms of the volume that either two are going to get? You're splitting hairs on like maybe 10 points across over the entire season. I think both of them are going to get 100 targets. Both have shots at touchdowns. I mean, the only thing that you're splitting hairs on is one plays for Kansas City and the other one plays for San Francisco.
No, so, the hair I will split. I mean, you've done this enough years now that I'm consistent on this. I'm not putting my money on a second-year player. Kittle's only done it once. Kelsey's done it multiple times.
And Kittle broke records.
I don't care.
Broke records.
Chris, I've watched enough
backup quarterback.
I've watched enough sports to see people break records and have one great year, and they
backup quarterbacks.
They never do it again. I'm just saying.
Backup quarterbacks, plural. Not just one. He did it with 2, and now he gets the starter back.
I'm going to just hit the music and call it an end. I'm just saying, I've done a lot of mock drafts. Because of you, I've probably done a few more best balls than I have in the past.
Look at you. Proud of you.
Kelsey is always the first tight end off the board. It's not even a question. So don't give me this splitting hairs, blah, blah, blah. Kelsey is the first tight end off the board every single time. That puts him in a tier by himself. Shake your head yes, and let's move on to quarterback.
No.
No. All right. We got like 5 minutes. Quarterback shouldn't take long.
You shouldn't. You think?
Yeah.
But you probably want Mahomes in a tier all by himself, right?
I would be honest. I'm not a quarterback guy. Even in 2 quarterback leagues, I'm not a quarterback. So quarterback to me is a little harder, I think, because
Here's where I would put Mahomes in a tier I put him in a tier.
Oh my God. I knew that was going to come. But in using my philosophy, which is in every draft I've done, other than a couple, Rodgers has gone first.
Phew.
Yeah, I've seen Rodgers go first a couple of times.
Goodness gracious.
Mahomes has gone first many more times. He is usually the first quarterback off the board.
Yep.
So, again, I would agree with you. That's why I get mad that you won't agree with me on the other 2. If they're always number 1 off the board, they deserve a tier by themselves. That means they're not equal regardless where you draft anybody else.
No, because there's a massive drop-off between Mahomes and like the next group. There's no massive drop-off between Kelsey and Ertz or Kelsey and Kittle. That's not a massive drop-off. So that's why they all go in a tier together.
All right.
Oh, you.
Tier 2, Watson, Luck, Rodgers, Ryan, Mayfield. That's the order they have them. I would struggle right now with health issues I would not put Luck above Rodgers personally.
I agree with you there. I pull him down.
And to be honest, I'm not a Watson guy either. If it was me, I would go Rodgers, Watson, Luck in tier 3.
I'd probably
tier 2, I'm sorry.
I'd probably cut that tier off at just Rodgers and Watson, to be quite honest with you.
I could live with that. And then that would, because again, if the quarterback Mahomes is done, I go another round and Rodgers and Watson's there, I'm taking Rodgers first. Watson. That would leave Luck, Ryan, Mayfield, Newton, Wilson, Wentz, Breeze. Unfortunately to me, now this is all one big jumble.
Cut it off at Breeze and then I'd probably say that'd be tier 3.
So you're not a Kyle Murray coming in and tearing up the league kind of guy?
Yeah, I think he's overvalued at this
You're
point.
not a Ben Roethlisberger coming in and doing what he did last year?
That's for me, it's absolutely less likely. He threw like 600 passes last year.
All right. So you would have Luck, Ryan, Mayfield, Newton, Wilson, Wentz, Breeze. Would you change the order?
No, not really. I mean, you could probably make a case for Wentz moving up, but maybe a couple spots ahead of Newton. So probably like in between Baker and Newton. That's probably where I'd have Wentz if you want to look at that. There's a case, if you really want to get into it, there's a case for Jameis Winston being in that tier. Because if you're so high on, everybody's so high on Evans, everybody's high on Godwin, everybody's high on Howard, and they have like no running game to speak of.
I'm kind of would go the other way. I actually would probably consider moving Wilson and Breeze down to the top of tier 4. But that's just me. I think Wilson's going to have issues this year with his receivers changing. They didn't help him on the line. I don't know. I'm not sure what's going to
help him on the line, and he still gets it done.
That's fine. He just won't get it done on my team unless he just, I don't know. I'd rather take my shots. To be honest, I'd rather try Kyler Murray. To me, has more upside than Wilson. But
I can agree. I can get behind that.
So I think, I think I'd be happy with any of those 6. But that's probably the order I would have: Luck, Ryan, Baker, Wentz, Newton, Wilson, Breeze, and to me, if anything, I would drop Breeze and Wilson down to tier 4, and then they would be with Winston and Murray. The key to me is the question I have it right now that we would have in tier 4 is Goff. I mean, we're putting all of his wide receivers, all 3 of them in top 5, and you see numbers and these expectations and all that, but then Goff is a quarterback that everyone has real low. I'm like, your wide receivers can't all finish in the top 15 and your quarterback not be in the top 10, if not even.
Sure can. I mean, Eli Manning did it a couple of times. He had Evan Ingram, he had Sterling Shepard, he had Odell Beckham, and he still sucked.
None of those 3 at the same time were in the top 15.
They were drafted that way. Absolutely, they were.
No, I'm talking finished in points at the end of fantasy.
At the end. Yeah. Okay. But I'm just saying the way that they're being drafted right now at the beginning of the season, I mean, they're all being drafted, in a similar fashion, and it's entirely possible for a quarterback to not wind up, matching, the stats, or I guess matching the finishes of his weapons.
And then the other thing, especially you're a big Cooper guy. So if everyone's on Cooper, but again, everyone has Dak Prescott down fairly low. Where would you put Prescott right at the moment?
I would probably, for me, he'd be above Goff.
Would you take him before or after Murray?
After Murray.
All right. I'll set him there and we'll come back and look. So we have Holmes in a tier by himself for once you did it right. Then we have Rodgers and Watson in tier 2. We have Mr. Calf. Andrew Luck in 4, Matt Ryan, Mayfield, Wentz, Newton, Wilson, Breeze. We'll come and fine-tune tiers 3 and 4. It is amazing that Mr. Brady, who just signed another new contract, is way down in the 20s. I don't know. A late round QB thing, even in a 2 quarterback thing, if I'm starting Tom Brady as my second quarterback all year round, the key with him
I have no issue with that.
No, because his floor is still high. Yeah, I don't think he's going to get you too many over 300 games anymore. Right. But I think he's always going to get you 250. And
250 and 2 was probably going to be about his baseline.
Yeah, which to me, and he'll probably do it. And it's funny that we would say that the oldest guy on that list is probably the most reliable. He just doesn't miss games either. He's just always there. Yeah. So that's just kind of funny.
So I think at the quarterback position, you want those spike weeks, and you're more apt to get those from the guys that can rush, like Dak Prescott, Lamar Jackson.
Right.
Even Kirk Cousins, he probably has a little bit more upside on a week-to-week basis than Tom Brady. It's just the downside with Kirk Cousins. The floor is just, don't bottom out. He could give you negative points.
Right. I agree. And then obviously there's always, I'm one of those, again, Rivers could have a great year. I know you said you don't like Roethlisberger, but again, to me, the quarterback, if there's ever a year to not worry about it, it's this year. Yeah. It just seems like even in 2 quarterback leagues this year, I think you can just wait.
It's so deep. I mean, absolutely deep. I mean, if you can find Tom Brady at quarterback 18, 19, 20, then it's deep at that point.
Well, but it's even Cousins. And I know you said, Eli was terrible and had thing, but even Cousins, we have two of his wide receivers, being also in the top 15. Well, that means Cousins got to at least have a decent floor.
Yeah, I mean that's absolutely there. And then we haven't even gotten to the guys that they're in quarterback purgatory, like Marcus Mariota, Andy Dalton. Sam Darnold.
Sam Bradford has fallen so far. Last year he had a bad back. I mean, the year before that he was a top 10 fantasy football quarterback. I mean, people can make fun. He's got wide receivers again this year. He didn't have great ones, necessarily last year. He's got, I think, a better running game this year. Yeah. I would have no problem with, Matthew Stafford, being
Matt Stafford. I mean, Nick Foles. I mean, if you really want to get, you want to go crazy a little bit. Yeah. I mean, Nick Foles is an option.
And believe it or not, if you wait really, really late in a 2-quarterback league and people start taking, I'm sorry, if they name Fitzpatrick the starter in Miami.
Oh, let's go.
I mean, he's got nothing to lose. He could care less.
He's going to go out guns blazing.
Yes, I definitely would.
He will sling that rock, boy. I'll tell you.
In a 2-quarterback league, in a deep bench slot, I'm picking him up as my third QB. I mean, I definitely pick him up because by week 2 you could be starting him. Yeah, he's lost.
I forget who they play week 1. I think it's Dallas. I thought they played Dallas week 1.
It doesn't matter to him. He will tuck that ball up. He doesn't care about interceptions. I don't know the guy. My point is he could become a starter quickly in Miami and quickly become somebody that's the thing. He's one of those that his upside, he could have the 180 and 1 TD. But
that's week 3.
He also could throw 400 5 times next year.
Yeah, I mean the highs are QB1, like the number 1 quarterback on the week high, and his lows are like quarterback 39.
Yeah, right. So, and even Josh Allen, if he runs and gets you 10 touchdowns, which is high for quarterback, but who knows? There's no one else on that team. They don't have a running back. So who knows? I don't know.
I mean, they still got LaShawn McCoy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's my point.
They've got Frank Gore.
Mm-hmm. That's my point. All right. I hear all that. I don't believe any of it, but I hear you. Chris, let me pull my screen down so I can see your pretty face. Ooh. Oh, we had a good time.
Always.
We got some stuff out there. We disagreed on everything. That always makes it a good show.
I know.
Right. There's no agreement here. We'll come back next week, and like I said, we'll dive into the middle round tiers 2, 3, and 4. That gives Chris, 6 days, 23 hours to read up on how to use tiers.
No, never.
Never. I'm never going to read. It's just not going to happen.
No.
I did see your article. You posted it today. When did you post? You posted something, and I was at work.
Which
and I
one?
On it. I don't know. It was Fantrax.
Oh, ADP risers and fallers. That was the latest.
That might be it.
Yeah.
So where can they follow you? Where can they find your writings?
You can find me on Twitter at Chris Allen FFWX. I've got stuff for Fantrax. That's their NFL draft package is being updated like almost on daily. And then I've got stuff for 4 for 4, and then a couple of things for Sports Illustrated that have been out for a while. And this is a new thing. I don't have any workout for them yet, but wanted to put it out there. I accepted a freelance position with Numberfire. I'll be working with them during the season.
Man, I'm going to lose you if you keep taking all these gigs.
That one won't be. I mean, it's freelance, so I won't have scheduled stuff that they'll need me to do. So I've been talking with Brandon Gadula and JJ about what they'll need from me during the season, and I can sign up. I can take on as much as I want and as little as I want, and they'll just pay me for when I can get stuff.
Right now, is it because I heard someone else talk about this gathering up in Toledo? Is that this Sunday?
Next weekend, actually, the Midwest Expo, Fantasy Football Midwest Expo, being run by Bob Lung, who actually I did a live draft with him 2 weekends ago up in Columbus. Great guy. But yeah, that's going on next week. Next weekend, not this weekend, but next weekend.
I kind of have that penciled in too. If things work out right, I might try to get up there. I got baseball guys up in the Toledo area that have wanted me to come up.
I've got tickets. So if somebody's looking for a way to get in, I've got discounted tickets that y'all can use in order to get in for a discounted price. I think it's like $10 at the door, but if you want to save yourself $5, you can use my promo code and then cut that price in half.
Oh, so I'll have to remember to drop your name.
Heck yeah! Or when you sign up, if you sign up online, you can just use my promo code and then it's.
But I want to drop your name to you. I want to be able to say, "Hey, Chris, come on. I know."
Dude, I'll be a nobody at that thing. I mean, Bob Harris. I mean, Football Diehard is going to be there.
Easy Kill is somebody everywhere. There are
going to be so many folks there. I'm going to be a nobody.
If I walk by, you will ignore me.
No, I'll be like, "Oh my God, it's not that guy again."
That guy who knows everything about tiers.
Exactly. Like if you want to learn about tiers. Actually, I'll be on the main stage doing a live podcast I think I've got the 3:00 spot. So if you're there, come by the main stage and I will bring you up and we will have this conversation about tiers. We'll get the whole crowd involved. How about that?
And I will wear my red hat that says "Make ESPN Great Again."
Oh my God.
Just saying, I have problems with ESPN right now. So
everybody does.
Right. I know. So, Mr. Chris Allen, thank you for coming on with me and giving me a few moments out of your precious fantasy life. That's why they come here. No one comes here because of me. I'm just the blowhard. So
everybody comes here to listen to you yell at me.
Nobody cares. They want to see if you can handle it. They just want to see if you can handle it.
I do my best.
All right, Chris, you can catch me. I'm just Easy Kill at a fantasy fan on Twitter. Email just a fantasy fan at gmail.com if you have questions or anything. Or fantasyfan.com takes you to our site there at Lenny's where you can see the replays and everything. We're on YouTube, we're on Spreaker, we're on iTunes. We're like everywhere. And I think that includes Argentina and Australia. I don't know.
What I've heard.
Yeah, Britain. I think a Britain popped up. So we're real big with the Brits.
Okay.
So we're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. We're just at 100 listeners almost every show now. I mean, I can handle that. And Kevin in Hawaii just popped in.
Yeah.
Hello, Kevin. Chris, say goodnight.
Good night.
This has been Just a Fantasy Fan Podcast. And to keep your fantasies going, follow us at justthefantasyfan.com. Say good night. Good night.
Maybe.